Thank you everyone for attending our afternoon session. It's another session where we're all together at the same time. This is our Graduate Research Fellowship Program session, and we've got a few folks from NSF here. I believe Dr. Christopher Hill and Dr. Narkrisha Norman are going to present first, and then Dr. Lanisha Adams will be talking with you all as well. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Adams, that you'll be opening it up for questions. And we encourage you all to engage in the session, ask questions. We want this to be an open dialogue back and forth. So with that, I will let Dr. Hill take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's terrific for the National Science Foundation to have this opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, or GRFP. And as was mentioned, we're going to give a presentation first, and then there'll be an opportunity for some questions and hopefully some really good answers connected with those questions. We can't tell you all the information you might want about GRFP in this short session today. And so we want you to know that there are a lot of resources that are available. NSF has provided a lot of resources connected with GRFP information about the program. And you can go to a website, nsfgrfp.org, to get additional information about the program. Now, GRFP, or the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, is at NSF, the National Science Foundation, and it's within the Division of Graduate Education. And currently there are 3 program directors. Today, 2 of those program directors, me, Christopher Hill, and Dr. Narkrisha Norman, are going to provide you with an overview of the program and a little bit of information about the application process. But as I said, if you want a lot more information, you can go to info@nsf.org or the website nsfgrfp.org. As I mentioned, we have a plan for today, and the first part is a presentation. The first part of that presentation will provide you with some general information about GRFP, describing the program, and especially a little bit more detailed information about the eligibility and also the ineligibility criteria used for GRFP. And then we'll talk a little bit about the application process itself, the application package, and the criteria used in the reviews of the applications. Then the plan is, after that presentation, we'll have an opportunity to answer your questions. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague from NSF, Dr. Narkrisha Norman, and she'll start with providing you with some general information and a description of the program.
Hello, everyone. A little bit about NSF GRFP. GRFP is actually NSF's oldest program. It's been around since about 1952. There's been over 60,000 GRFP awards awarded, and those go to graduate students whom are or will be pursuing research-based master's and doctoral degree programs in eligible fields of study. And there are 40+ fellows who have gone on to become Nobel laureates. We have fellows from every state, and over 450 fellows have become members of the National Academy of Sciences. GRFP is a 5-year award, and 3 of those awards are financially supported. That includes $34,000 in annual stipend and $12,000 for cost of education support. One of the benefits of GRFP is that there's no postgraduate study service requirement. So just a 5-year fellowship, 3 years of financial support, and no postgraduate service. We're happy to say that in our 2020 competition, there were over 500 academic institutions represented. And those are represented in the eligible major fields of study, and those are eligible fields of study for NSF. On the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the major eligible fields of study, but also note that there are numerous subfields of study that fall under those major fields of study. And as Dr. Hill said, additional information can be found at nsfgrfp.org, including a eligibility questionnaire, which allows applicants to go through this questionnaire, and it helps them decide if they're eligible or not for GRFP. A little bit more detailed description. So as I mentioned before, it's a 5-year award, which totals to $138,000. There are other opportunities within that award. There's the intern program, which is a well-funded program. It's a non-academic internship program. There's also the FASED, Individual Disability Support through GRFP, and the Career Life Balance Initiative, which a lot of our fellows actually take advantage of. So the fellowship is awarded to individuals, but this is paid through their graduate institution. It's flexible, so fellows have choice of their project, their advisor, and a graduate program. It's unrestricted, as I said before, so no service requirement. It's also portable, so it can be used at any accredited nonprofit U.S. institution of higher education with a campus with a U.S. campus for research-based master's and doctoral degree programs. We award approximately 2,000 awards yearly. So you can see that in 2019, there was a 16% success rate. There are 2 overall goals for GRFP. So the goal of the major overall goal is to recruit individuals into STEM early in their career. So we want to select, recognize, and financially support individuals who have demonstrated the potential to be high achieving scientists and engineers. We want to find those early in their careers. We want to broaden participation in STEM of underrepresented groups, including women, minorities, persons with disabilities, and veterans. A little detail about eligibility. So to be eligible for GRFP, you have to be a U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident. Early in your career, as we said before, undergraduate or graduate students. Pursuing a research-based master's or doctoral degrees. We don't actually support professional degree programs. And this has to be in STEM or in STEM education. Once you become a fellow, it requires full-time enrollment in your graduate program at an accredited nonprofit U.S. institution of higher education. And unfortunately, we don't support foreign institutions. There are kind of 2 categories for GRFP. The level 1 are seniors or those who may have just gotten their bachelor's degrees that have no graduate study. Level 1s are able to apply to GRFP as many times as they would like before actually becoming a graduate student. Once you become a graduate student, you fall into level 2, 3, or 4. For level 2, that's the first year graduate students. Level 3 is the second year. And level 4 are returning graduate students that have had a greater than 2-year interruption in graduate study. Levels 2, 3, and 4 are only eligible to apply for GRFP just once. I mentioned before ineligible degree programs. Those are professional degree programs such as MDs or DDS programs. This also includes those joint science professional degree programs such as the MD, PhD, the community, global, or public health programs, counseling, social work, education, except for STEM education. So we do support STEM education. We do not support history degree programs, but we support history of science degree programs. To dig a little bit deeper, if we were to talk about ineligible fields of study, this would be research with directly related health goals, such as disease prevention, clinical research, behavioral studies, outcome research, such as health services, health policy, research directly leading to clinical trials, and applied research on plant pathology, such as maximizing agricultural production or impacts on food safety. For details on the ineligible degree programs and fields of study, you find those in the latest GRFP solicitation. I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Hill to talk a little bit about the application package.
Thank you, Dr. Norman. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit of information about the application for GRFP. And as Dr. Norman mentioned, there's something called the solicitation. And the solicitation is a instruction manual. It's the rule book really for applying to GRFP. And the brand new solicitation came out this week. And when we're through with the presentation, I'm going to try to find the new number so you can use it to search for the brand new hot off the press application instructions that we call the solicitation here at NSF. When you look at that solicitation, you'll see it provides the rules for applying to GRFP. And there are really 5 parts to the application, 5 sets of things that have to be submitted. The first thing is really a set of information about you, about your personal information, about your education, your work experience, those kinds of things, publications you might have, or honors or awards. So that's the first thing. Then there are 2 written statements that have to be submitted. And the first one is a personal, relevant background and future goals statement. And for that statement, you have 3 pages. And they have to be submitted. It has to be submitted as a PDF, a 3-page PDF. And then the other statement that you have to send in as part of the application is a graduate research plan statement. And that's even shorter. It's only 2 pages long. And again, it has to be a PDF. So besides the general information and the 2 statements, you also have to submit your transcripts, and they need to be submitted as PDFs. And your bachelor's degree transcript is mandatory, and any transcripts connected with any programs, degree programs that you've been associated with need to be submitted. And then the last thing you need to submit are letters of reference. And you don't really send these in. What you do is you list a set of names of people who will send in letters of reference. And you have to send us at least 3 names. You can list up to 5, but 3 are mandatory for us to review the application. Now, of those 3 names that you list, only 2 have to actually be sent in, but you have to at least give us the names of 3 people. You can list up to 5, and at least 2 of those have to send the letters in. So again, the 5 parts are this general information, kind of personal information, background experiences, and then these 2 statements. And we'll talk a little bit more about those statements because those are pretty important. Everything's important for the application, of course. And then the transcripts and the letters of reference. Now, when you get all that stuff prepared, the deadline for sending in the application is in October. It's going to be the 3rd week of October, and there's going to be a specific day for the deadline depending on what your field of study is. So for example, if your graduate study program is in life sciences, then it's going to be 1 day. Typically it's Monday. And then, for example, engineering, it's usually Wednesday of that week. So depending on what field of study you're planning on going into, you're going to have a different deadline. And the deadline for submitting on that particular day is 5 p.m. the time that you put on the application for your mailing address. So your mailing address time zone is what's used to figure out the deadline of 5 p.m. Now, as I mentioned, this slide would have been up to date a couple days ago, but we just recently, very recently, got a brand new solicitation, and I'll try to find that new number for you.
I put it in the chat, Jill.
Okay.
21602.
Thank you. 602. 600? 602. Wow. Okay. So another thing connected with the application process, if accessibility accommodations are needed, connected with sending in the application, please contact info@nsfgrfp.org at least 4 weeks before the deadline, so arrangements can be made, okay? So that's an important thing about the deadline. Now, if you think about this deadline, it's in October, and the next week after you submit the application, the next week is the deadline for the reference writers to get in their letters for you. And so that usually is the first week, but by sometime in late October or early November. And then if you're one of these applicants that Dr. Norman described as a level 1, that is somebody that has never been to grad school and either is currently an undergraduate who is expecting to enroll in graduate school next fall, or is a person that has their bachelor's degree but has not started graduate school. That's a level 1. Those people are typically, after they submit the application for GRFP, they can use a lot of that same information to prepare their application for grad school. So October and November, those are the months when all the materials are sent to NSF. And then if you're not in grad school already, you can start working on your application to grad school. Maybe you want to apply to more than one place, in fact. And then you have to wait around a little bit, not only to find out if you got accepted to grad school, but if you've been selected for a fellowship. Usually we know by late March or maybe early April who NSF will select for a GRFP fellowship. So you can expect it to be announced by early April. And then if you're selected, in terms of this whole schedule, if you're selected for a fellowship, you have to let NSF know by early May. You have to accept the award. And then you start grad school in the next fall and you have the fellowship to use. So that's an example of the GRFP application timeline, starting with the applications in October and then going to using the fellowship in the next fall. Now, I mentioned there were 5 different parts to the application package, and they're all very important. We asked the reviewers to look at the entire package in a comprehensive and holistic way. But a lot of people are interested in what might be put into these statements, the personal experience statement and the research plan statement. So we thought we'd provide you with some hopefully helpful suggestions connected with those 2 specific parts of the application. So there are these 2 statements, and remember, there's a page limit for each of them, and they have to be sent in a special format. They have to be sent in as a PDF. So the first statement is the personal relevant background goals statement, and that's 3 pages. And this is really a really great opportunity for you to let the reviewers for NSF know about you, an opportunity to tell your story and demonstrate your potential for STEM, being to be a future scientist, okay? So the kinds of things you might include in that are experiences, either your professional or even your personal experiences that have contributed to your motivation in your preparation for pursuing a career in STEM as a scientist or an engineer or in mathematics. And this personal statement is also an opportunity to let the reviewers know about your career aspirations and your future goals and how your past experiences have shaped what your future goals might be. And so you can include information about past experiences, for example, what kinds of research you might have done, or what kind of professional experience you might have, what kind of projects you've worked on and what your role was. You might explain how you got involved in the project and what you did as part of the project, and even explain what the project was and why it was important and what you learned from the project, and any training that you had to take that was special connected with that experience. So the whole idea is to provide information to the people that are looking at the applications in terms of your experience and the contributions you've made to past projects and that kind of information. Now, the second statement is a research statement. And this is an opportunity to describe your research plan. And one of the things that's very important to know is that NSF and the GRFP program is not expecting this to be a commitment, a solid commitment to do this research, especially for those level 1 applicants, those applicants that are undergraduates or have at least not started graduate school. It's possible that you, 1, don't know where you're going to grad school, and 2, won't know exactly what your research plan will be, your research project will be when you're there. So what is this statement that you have to prepare for the application? Well, it's an example to kind of show off a little bit about how you think about science, how you think about designing a research project. And it has to be a realistic project. It might eventually be the one you really do, or if you're in graduate school, if you're one of these other levels, like a level 2 or a level 3 applicant who's already in graduate school, it might be the real project you're working on. But this is an opportunity to communicate your research idea and the approach you would take, and explain the plan and the method you would use and what you would expect to learn from that research project, and how would you measure if it was successful, and even thinking about after you get the results of your research, what would be the next step. Now, remember, when you're writing this statement, think also about who's going to be looking at it and thinking about it in terms of evaluating the entire application. The people who are looking at these are experts. They're typically faculty members, professors that have a general knowledge of your field of study, your major field of study. But remember, they might not be specialists in the exact research project that you're thinking about doing it. So for example, you might have a very detailed project that you're going to do in, let's say, in chemistry, and the reviewers will all be trained in chemistry, but maybe not in that specialty. So when you're writing the statement, it's a time to think about this great project you have, how the method you would use and what the results would be, but try to communicate that in a way that a professor that was in the general major field of study would be able to understand. So it should be not too overly technical, and you should kind of think about it communicating to non-specialists. And obviously, as part of this, you should make it very clear what your contributions are to the research, right? What you're going to be doing. Now, this statement should really focus on the kinds of things the reviewers are going to be looking at in terms of reviewing the applications. And the reviewers are told that they're expected to think about the entire application in terms of 2 major factors, or two major criteria. One is intellectual merit, and the other is broader impacts. And those are criteria that are used in these evaluations for GRFP, but also for all of NSF. I'll get back to that in a little bit more details, because that's a pretty important part of the application in writing these statements. I did want to mention a little bit about the other parts of the application package, just to remind you that there are some important things to think about in terms of the reference letters and the transcripts. As I mentioned before, you can list up to 5 names. You don't have to list 5 names, but you have to give us at least the names of 3 people. And of those names that you do provide to NSF as part of your application, at least 2 of the letters have to get to NSF in terms of by the deadline for your application to be accepted for review. And we suggest that you list 3 names, and hopefully 3 references will send in their letters, because the more letters, the more information the reviewers have about you. But remember, at least 2 of those letters have to get in. The 2 letters are mandatory. And then just a reminder about the transcripts. Everybody has to send in their bachelor's degree transcript and any other degree program transcripts. Okay. And these don't have to be official. They can be official or unofficial transcripts that will be accepted. Well, this application package with all these parts to it are going to be looked at by reviewers working to help NSF and Grfp. And as I mentioned, NSF uses 2 major criteria that have been approved by the National Science Board in terms of thinking about these applications. And Grfp uses a comprehensive review of the entire application and looks at the applications in terms of the evidence for intellectual merit and broader impacts. And intellectual merit means how important is the proposed activity to advancing knowledge within a specific field or even across different fields. And broader impacts is really how well does the proposed activity benefit society or advance desired societal outcomes. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail connected with the application process. Remember, we use a comprehensive review, and the applications are reviewed based on their demonstrated potential for significant achievement in STEM, using a comprehensive holistic approach, looking at all parts of the application package, okay? And the reviewers are asked to think about these 2 criteria, intellectual merit and broader impacts. So in your written statements, for example, think about how you can provide evidence for intellectual merit. And a shorthand for that would be intellectual merit is the potential to advance knowledge, okay? Evidence of that might be in your transcripts, your grades, or any awards that you list in the personal information. It could be in the plan to conduct the research, so that might be in the research statement. It could be information you provide that gives evidence of how you've worked in the past as a member of a team, or evidence of how you can work independently. Information about how you've interpreted and communicated research, examples of taking the initiative of solving problems and being motivated and persistent, and the potential of your approach to your major field of study and your research plan to advance knowledge. So advanced knowledge is connected with intellectual merit. And so you can see the possibilities of providing information for the reviewers, any evidence for intellectual merit can be found in all parts of the application, in the personal statement, in the research plan, in the letters, in the transcripts. Any part of the application could be used for that. And that's similar also with broader impacts. And remember, broader impacts is the potential impact of you as an individual, or the potential impact of the research on society, why it's important, okay? And examples of societal benefits may include increasing participation, for example, increasing participation of underrepresented groups, women or persons with disabilities or veterans. Examples of outreach or mentoring, increasing public scientific literacy, or even how your application provides information about making connections, increasing collaboration between the university and industry and other parts of the community. And also, just like intellectual merits, broader impacts, information and evidence of broader impacts can be found in all parts of the application. So think about that in terms of your personal statement. Think about it in terms of your research plan. And you might even mention that these are the two criteria that are used by NSF for the review to the people that are writing letters for you. You might tell them that the reviewer is going to be looking at this in terms of intellectual merit and broader impacts. So what Dr. Norman and I have tried to do is provide you with first an overview of GRFP, and it's about a nice healthy chunk of money that can help you with your graduate education, and you have to be eligible, and then you have to submit the application, right? Again, if you want more details about this, we're happy to answer some questions today, but really the thing to look at is that brand new solicitation that Dr. Adams listed in the chat. And besides that solicitation, I really encourage you, if you're interested and think you're eligible and want to see if you're eligible, go to www.nsfgrfp.org. I want to thank you. GRFP is exciting. It's an exciting program at NSF, and we're delighted that you might be thinking about applying. And we're really grateful for this opportunity here at NSF to provide you with some more information about GRFP.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Dr. Adams, please go ahead and take it away.
Yes, I wanted to kind of change up our format here a little bit. If people have questions directly about application eligibility, to ask them now, so that when I know Dr. Hill and Dr. Norman are only available until at the hour. So, in the next 20 minutes or so, they have to leave. And so I want to make sure if folks, have very key questions that they ask them, after the presentation, after this first set of presentation.
I think what Dr. Adams is saying is if you've got questions you better answer that you want Dr. Norman and I to try to answer, now's the time.
Yep. Don't be shy. I believe everyone has the capacity to unmute or come on video. And if you do not want to verbally say, you can type in the chat. So we have one from Samuel in the chat. Will you please let us know whether or not, if awarded, the NSF GRFP could be reserved for the first year?
Well, there are some kind of code words we use for this. And what you can do is you can go on reserve, okay? That means you're not using the stipend that particular year, okay? So we call that on reserve. You can't defer the fellowship. You can't start the clock a year late. You can start the clock, but you have 2 years you can be on reserve and 3 years when you can get the stipend or be on tenure. So that first year you could get the stipend or you could be on reserve.
And Samuel is thanking you for that response in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question.
That questions, rather. Well, excellent.
Diola, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, you're unmuted.
Well, yeah, I'm muted, all right, but I really don't have a question. I understood very well what was said, and I have had 1, 2, 3, 4 students actually win this award in the past, and they are planning to get some more in there.
That is awesome.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yes. And if any faculty that are on this or in this presentation participating want to be reviewers, we will please check out the nsfgrfp.org website, and the reviewer website registration will launch fairly soon. So just want to plug that here for any faculty.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. As Dr. Norman mentioned, we did a lot of applications, which means we need a lot of reviewers, and the reviewers are great. And if you, there are two, there are a couple of reasons you might want to be a reviewer. One is connected with helping your students know what the process is a little bit, so think about that.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What's the success rate? What's the yield?
But Dr. Norman mentioned that. Maybe she wants to go over that a little bit. The success rate.
The success rate in previous years has been approximately 16%. But I say that, but I'm always wary when I say that because I don't want it to be discouraging. There are many reasons why that success rate is 16%.
68%. The reason I asked
16%.
16%. Oh, I'm sorry. The reason I asked that because sometimes some of our students, they're very hesitant to apply because they think it's so competitive that they don't even want to try. So I just wanted to ask that, and how do we encourage them, even though it is a competitive one? The students think sometimes, oh, they have no chance to get it or something. They're so competitive. This kind of fear is there also.
Well, Dr. Norman usually says this, and I apologize if you were about to say this, Dr. Norman, but she says, there's no way of getting a fellowship if you don't apply. So that's the first thing.
That's right.
Students. Okay.
That's a golden rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're looking for talent across the whole country. We're looking for future scientists that will impact our society and our country. Everybody should, if you're eligible, we encourage you to apply. And this is really important. Now the National Science Foundation is all about science and about the future of the impact of science on society and our country and even globally. And even today, if you look at the news, there are a lot of people interested in the value of science and NSF. And there's the possibility, we don't know yet, but what happens if they increase the number of fellowships that are available? Well, if you haven't applied and they add more, then you can't get one, okay?
That's right.
So the only way to get a fellowship is to work hard, get a team together, and get that application in.
Yep.
Dr. Norman, what have I missed about that?
I could add a fun fact in that I'm a Lewis Stokes Fellow. So as a Lewis Stokes Fellow, I say that this is a perfect opportunity for fellows or fellows in training, such as I was. I also say that this is one of the first introductions to NSF. And so what this allows the applicant to do is actually see how the reviewers feel about their research statement. And as you're becoming a scholar and you're developing your statements, it's good to have this experience to know to get that feedback to help further refine and develop your statement for your career.
Thank you.
And aside from that, the 16% success rate doesn't mean that you won't be among the 16%. You can't sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to get it. Somebody's got to get this.
Somebody got to get it. Yep.
Might as well be you.
I'll add something to that as well. Our office has had a lot of students as well receive the fellowship over the years. And we also tell them, like, this is pretty much the most you'll have to do. Most of them are applying for grad school. And so another way to encourage them is to let them know that this will also help you in your graduate school applications. Once you put together an NSF fellowship package, then you are more than ready to apply for graduate school. So it's not a waste. I think sometimes they're a little bit hesitant because they don't think they'll get it and they think it'll be just a waste of time putting together the application. But if they can see the value in getting that practice, as you mentioned, and knowing they can use it for other things, then they'll be more than likely to be willing to apply.
That's really terrific. Just imagine that you're going to apply to grad school, and like that schedule showed, you start really thinking about that maybe, like let's say, or a little bit before Thanksgiving or something like that. If you've got this application already submitted, you've talked to your reference writers that you might want. You've already thought pretty extensively about, an idea you might have for grad school. You've probably thought about the places you might want to go. So it's all a big investment. It's a win-win. It just helps you start early for that stuff, basically.
That's right.
Another angle of what Ms. Crawford just said is I have encouraged students in the past to apply, and in the process, let them understand that they can apply for NSF graduate fellowship, but that's not the only one out there. The National Defense Scholarship Fellowship is there. The
Yes.
National Physical Science Consortium Fellowship is there. So preparing for NSF make you more than ready to apply for any of those others. So chances are you will actually get one of them.
That's right.
You can't carry, if you get both, you cannot accept both, of course, but
that's right.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to share, and I was going to mention this because I've been talking to, I was going to share some success tips from different GRFP fellows that I spoke with, about 30 of them. And one of the things that I found was that through the process of applying for the fellowship for GRFP, it's made them kind of an expert in applying for other fellowships, and you can receive more than one. I've talked to, I think pretty much all of them that I spoke with said that they not only got GRFP, but they also received a Ford Fellowship and some other ones from the institutions that they ended up selecting. So that process, exactly what you said, Ms. Crawford, exactly. Another question in the chat about if, from Aisha, can I apply if I'm seeking a PhD but already have a terminal master's degree?
Well, we'll try to answer this kind of very specific question, but I should tell you that this is the kind of thing that sometimes we have to ask a whole set of extra questions to know exactly how to answer this question. In other words, you ask a question, we have to ask you 3 questions to determine exactly what the right answer is. So I'm going to give you kind of a general answer that might not apply, maybe it does, but this is the kind of thing to go to the website, because first there's this, you can take kind of like a quiz that will help you with this. And then if you still aren't sure if you're eligible, then you can actually, send an email or communicate with GRFP about that. So the general answer, and I caution you, this might not be specific to you because we don't know all the little details, right? But the general idea is that there are these 4 levels, and level 1 is for undergraduates. And then there's these 3 other levels that are connected with people that are in graduate school or have been in graduate school. And one of the categories, level 4, is a person that has a graduate degree, has a master's degree, and has been out of school since they got their degree for over 2 years, okay? So they haven't been in grad school for 2 years, and they're not in grad school when they apply for the application for the fellowship. Okay, so there are a lot of tricky little parts to that, right? So there is a possibility, but I don't know about your specific case, and we could sit here for an hour before we might know all the details, right? So there is an opportunity. We've thought about that, and we want people that fall into this very specific category to have that opportunity. But for one thing, you can't be already in grad school when you apply, and there's a there's this time window connected with it. And there might be other things, right? So you might be eligible based on that, but not eligible based on something else. So that's the general answer. Lucretia really works a lot with, Dr. Norman works a lot with the eligibility. Is there anything, without saying definitely that we're talking about your question, just general eligibility connected with graduate students that might be useful to let people know, to at least think about and look for a little bit more information on?
Well, one thing that's useful to know is that we have an entire operations center that goes, that helps you go into very specific questions, because it would depend on your degree. There are different rules for joint degree programs and so on and so forth. So the eligibility quiz is one thing that you should start with. But beyond that, if that doesn't answer your question specifically, you should contact the operations center, because we spend a lot of time making sure to flush out those different policies to see if you're qualified.
And I just put the link for the eligibility quiz in the chat, and also our email address if you have any directed questions. We're pretty good at responding to those questions and nuances. So please feel free to reach out, and yeah, don't be shy. Come off mute, ask questions if you have them. Put the questions in the chat. We have about 10 more minutes to answer these kinds of questions, and then I'll share some insights with you from Grfp awardees.
Just mention before somebody asks a new question, Dr. Adams could find a lot of people. We say, there's a certain percentage that get it every year. But when that amounts to a lot of people, there have been like 40,000 people that have gotten this award. So there are a lot of people out there, okay? It's not, you might bump into one while you're walking home today, they're around.
That is very true. I was speaking with someone, actually, to that point. I was talking to someone about different graduate school issues, applying, finishing your dissertation, doing all of this, and it turned out they were a Grfp fellow, and I was like, what? It was amazing, because it wasn't a centerpiece of the conversation. So it does happen. I think there are a lot more of them around that you may interact with, you may interface with. And what's amazing is a lot of the awardees, they're very open to sharing insights and to even sharing what they did that worked successfully, information about how they contacted the faculty who wrote their letters of recommendation, their timeline. I mean, I've reached out to quite a few, and I was amazed at how open they were to sharing information. And so I encourage everyone to, maybe ask at your institution. You might know of them. Faculty might have you can interface with them directly.
Dr. Adams, I'm going to give you a very short little story connected with that. As Dr. Norman mentioned, Grfp has been around for a long time. It's been around for 70 years, okay? Next year, it'll be 70 years since NSF have been giving this award out. There's somebody alive still that got it. He's like 93, and he's still excited about science, and he's so enthusiastic, and you could tell the reason he got that award back in 1952.
Wow.
And we're looking for the same kind of enthusiasm in the people I'm talking to right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can give a tip while we're waiting for questions, and that tip would be to make sure you apply early. The system will not accept certain errors in your application. And so if you're waiting to the very last minute and there's an error that happens, you won't have time to contact the operations center, and you might miss that deadline date.
Even to the point that if you're, let's say, 10 minutes late and you try to send in that application, it won't even get to us. It'll just say, can't do it, won't happen. Okay, it won't even get here. That's not a positive way to end a session, I would say, but it's true. It's a pretty important warning. Don't do all this work and then
That's
forget
actually
that,
positive.
submit that
It will increase our chances because we will avoid the last minute attempts. Yeah, it's positive. The faculty advisor are sometimes, at least in our cases, I was faculty, but my assistant are actually who did the lifting, the heavy lifting of following up, tracking them. This, you have this, you have that. So I believe the faculty are to play a great role in seeing to it. Not only that they apply, but we do so on time.
Yeah, when I applied for the Lewis Stokes fellowship, my advisor actually wouldn't accept my application, and I had to go start all over again. So thankfully, I had her in my corner. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have got it off the first draft that I wrote.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions for our NSF representatives? Any comments?
I like the presentation, if I can say so.
Yes, likewise.
Yeah. And I think we will try throughout the LS LAMP, the Louisiana AMP, to actually push more for this. We have been trying before, but this conference is a very good reminder that we need, there is something out there we need to plan for.
Yes, that sounds great.
Several of our campus coordinators are actually online for this conference. I saw their names and their faces. So the future looks good for LS Lab.
That is awesome. I know that Dr. Hill and Dr. Norman might stay for the next few minutes, and if we have any more questions coming in, great. I don't have too much more to share, but I did have some insights, and I also wanted to show you fresh off of the press. We have, oh, you probably can't see it very well. Anyway, 18 pages, the solicitation, NSF 21602. You can get that from nsf.gov website. I put the link in here, and it has all of the information you will need. I'm always looking at the appendices because in the appendix, you have the major fields of study with the subfields listed out specifically. And this is just so very important. In talking to the fellows, that was one thing that they conveyed to me, because there were some cases that I wanted to highlight for folks in STEM education and learning sciences. Now, there may be some computer science folks. I spoke with someone, and their expertise was in computer engineering and all of these complexities. But that was the PhD program and their graduate research that they wanted to focus on. However, the outcome for what they wanted was to do STEM learning. And so instead of picking the other computer information sciences, instead of picking that as their primary field of study, they picked STEM learning, STEM education and learning research, because the outcome for what they wanted and their focus and all of that was very pertinent. So this solicitation is very important, not only for the requirements, but also for some of those nuances, because you really want to be careful about what you pick, as how you classify your work affects who then reviews your application. So I have some insights, and I wanted to, have it be more informal, because these are just talking to folks. Like I said, I spoke with 30 fellows, and they wanted me to bring this information to this panel to share. So Dr. Norman and Dr. Hill, they talked about the research statements and the requirements of what you need to submit. And the fellows that I spoke with said it's very important to tell a story with the required statements. You don't just want to just say in the most matter-of-fact way, this is my research. You want to give a picture of who you are as a person, so that what you aspire to be and what you want stays fresh in the minds of the reviewers. This was every single fellow that I spoke with said that that was very, very important, and they felt that was what helped them receive the fellowship. One of the requirements of telling this story about your research and who you are is being personal. There is a personal statement aspect, and put the personal in personal statement. So again, let the reviewers know, like they feel like they know who you are professionally, and in terms of your trajectory. What if you've done some really cool research in a lab, and that gives you insight into how you want to be in the future as a scientist, and maybe you want to be a faculty member, or whatever your trajectory is. Give them those nuggets about, this is what it means to me personally, and also to the field in a broader sense. A key thing we were speaking on before was allowing plenty of time, not just in terms of applying, but also in terms of preparing, because you want to make sure that the faculty who recommend you can say really awesome things. And there was a fellow who even recommended a time frame for what you should. I wanted to, because she was very precise. She said, if you're gonna tell folks about success, pretty much in June you're finding out information. July, from last year, they said that that's when the solicitation was released, and we just released it. So the solicitation 21602 is out. You want to read that the solicitation and really make sure you understand all of the components that are there and nuances. And then in August, this is just recommendations, outline and draft your actual research plan, and contact folks for writing the letters of recommendation so that you can meet with each of them. This was like the biggest thing I heard across most of the awardees, is speaking, not just sending an email, but setting up a time to say, hey, like I have this really extreme interest, and then they can, once you meet with them, they can have that as part of the letters, so that there's alignment between what you say in your statements, and then also with what the faculty or other folks who are writing you the letters of recommendation have to say about you. And then if you're having a nice rough draft in September, you pretty much can finalize that in September. So that way, when your reviewers are writing their letters of recommendation for you, they have it. And if the deadlines start in October, and there are different deadlines depending on your field, but if the first one is life sciences, and it's October 18th, and that information is in the solicitation. I'm looking right at it, so I can tell you offhand. But essentially, if they have the information that you are going, like they have your package complete, they can really highlight, accentuate, expand on what you talk about, what they see in you. And that was that insight about the timeline was very useful from one fellow who wrote to me and said, this was my timeline. And the reason why they emphasize that is because they had applied year before, after they finished undergrad, didn't receive it, received an honorable mention, and then applied again the following year. So you can apply once, per application cycle, depending on your eligibility criteria and at which level. That's very important to say. But this was very insightful in terms of, they tried, they got the honorable mention, and then they tried again and then received it as an awardee. And then the other piece about writing the statements that folks gave me insight on was making sure you emphasize what makes you, researcher, scientist, unique. What's unique about your trajectory? How how do you stand out in the field? And you want to situate that in like your literature review, talk about the other scholars doing the work, but then talk about how maybe you have some idea that is building off of someone else, or that is a little spinoff that is very different. So you really want to emphasize that. But I thought that was really interesting, is the unique piece. Like, how is this different? And tie it back to who you are personally. And then the last piece was about applying in multiple ways. The process of applying gives you insight into other applications that NSF puts out, and then also other foundations like the Fort Foundation, for example. Most of them got more than just one. And I thought that was really interesting because, you think, oh, I'm only going to go for this one thing. But if you look at the process and the kinds of questions and the way those questions are being asked, it's very similar. It's like, what is your research? Why is this important? How is it situated? What's the contextual background? And you want to make sure you align who you are with all of that.